Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel where I show people how to make things on the lathe each and every week. I do on occasion throw in some flat work, but for the most part, if it isn't made on the lathe, I don't care to do it. This week, we've got another basket case bowl, and I like to call these basket case bowls because of all the issues that they have. You can see right through there. There's some really bad end grain in this piece on both sides actually. And when I roughed this out, in 2020, and I got BEM, which means bird's eye maple. So there must be some bird's eye maple inside of this too. So we're gonna clean this up and anyway, do these fixes. And I know that a lot of turners have a lot of bowls like this in their inventory that they just, they don't know what to do with them. And well, anyway, I'm going to show you how to repair them and take something that's trash and turn it into treasure. And I should also mention at the end of this video, we're going to give this bowl away. So please stick around. Let's head over to the bench and let's get a waste block put on the bottom of this, and then we can trim it up. So getting right into this, this is the Kutzall sander. This has replaced a lot of my sanding needs as far as the grinder is concerned, and do highly recommend getting one. I was going through a lot of those flap discs and well, not anymore. Great product, really love it. All right, so before I stick this on, I'm still getting some questions about these homemade faceplates that I've made. I've got about 25 of these. All you need to do is find a nut that will fit your lathe. Now, of course, most threads are pretty large on most lathes, so you may not be able to get that at your local hardware store, but a place like Fastenal or Farm Supply or someplace like that, you might be able to find the right size nuts that fit your lathe. This is just, I don't even think it's 1/4 inch. We'll say it's 1/4 inch metal, and I just use a hole saw, cut out the outside profile, and then of course cut out the center, and then weld them together. Drilled the holes, and that's it. It's a very simple thing to make, and when you kind of finish bowls the way I do, it's important to have a number of these, and then that way you're not kind of held up in a production sense, even though I'm not really doing production work anymore. But I know there's a lot of people that are interested in these, and I mean, they are dirt cheap compared to what you're going to pay for online for your lathe. So I just look down on top of it when I'm setting these glue blocks on. My bowls are plenty thick, so there's lots of meat to turn away. So, when you rough out a bowl, for every 10 inches in diameter, your bowl should be 1 inch thick. So if it's, if it's 20 inches in diameter, the thickness of your bowl should be 2 inches thick. And the reason for that, of course, wood, when it dries, is going to warp and twist. And so you need that room there to correct that. So anyway, as soon as this glue hardens up, we'll be on the lathe. Starting off with the 5/8 bowl gouge from David Ellsworth. A lot of gouge work in this, well, in the beginning anyway. And I should also mention for the new people, the way that I stuck that waste block on there, or that faceplate, is by the use of an electric frying pan. So hot melt glue, high temperature hot melt glue, melt it in an electric frying pan, then of course I just dip it into it and stick it on the bottom of the bowl. I've been doing this for many years, and I rarely have had a failure. So this is a fairly large bowl. It was 13 inches in diameter when I first started. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you now. I forgot to measure it, but I will certainly hear at the end of the video. And as you can see, I mean, it has moved and warped quite a bit. If you look at the very center of the bowl, there's hardly any movement there. So all that movement is from the wood drying and causing the wood to distort the way that it is there today. But, all wood turners have got a pile of inventory like this. I shouldn't say that. Maybe some would burn a piece like this, but, I usually, as a general rule, don't do that with any of my bowls, because one of the main things with my business was inlay work, even long before coming to YouTube. And so I find that, I can pretty much save almost every piece The only time that maybe I might really pass up on pieces of wood is if they're too soft. You look at how much stabilizing resin is going to cost in regards to what the final product's going to cost, and of course all of the labor involved. Sometimes it just really isn't worth your while, and it is straight up firewood. So anyway, we're just doing some little bit of shear scraping here, and then we'll be able to move to the rim. I really like using the shear scraping method. It will give you a really clean surface with those really fine shavings that I'm showing right there. It's exactly what you want. Now I know that there's a lot of people watching my content that are not wood turners and don't really understand the meaning of twice turned bowls. So I will explain that again. Essentially, a wood turner gets logs. It gets processed into roughed out bowls like I started with. Typically, after they're roughed out, I will always put anchor seal on. And anchor seal is like a liquid wax that hardens, and that actually slows the release of moisture, preventing cracking. So I would put the anchor seal on, put it in my drying shed for 6 months. Once that's done, start rotating them through my fridge kilns, and then put them back on the lathe after they're down to 7% moisture content or lower. Now this particular batch of maple that I've got, I remember this because I got it from a local here in the area, and the log had all kinds of issues. So if I didn't put the anchor seal on, it would have cracked in many other spots because that moisture wants to leave the bowl faster than the wood is willing to move. And then, so if you lose too much moisture, the wood's going to fight back and it's going to crack. But I knew going into it when I started processing these logs, like, well, these are going to be character bowls that I'll be able to show on the channel later on, and sure enough, this is one of them. If you're a single turn turner, then of course what you're going to do is take logs that are just, laying out in your yard, and you're going to process them. You're going to take them in, trim them up, dry them out best you can. Some single turners will use like a heat gun to try and drive a bit of the moisture out of the blank prior to sanding and finishing it. But I've never really liked the look of those bowls because typically they're going to move and distort, and I like clean lines, and I want things to stay relatively stable after my customers purchase them. So that's why I typically don't do any single turn turnings. We're making pretty good progress here. As you can see, there's still lots of thickness, easily 3/4 of an inch to work with. And for the most part, everything is all trued up now. I typically don't like to go below a 1/2 inch when I've got inlays in the sides of bowls like this. So that's usually where I'd like to be when turning this. This gets a little thinner, but it's still perfectly fine. All right, so it's been a couple of days since I first trimmed this, and hopefully you picked up the wobble that's in this now. So when I was in full production, when you put that anchor seal on these pieces and they dry, they get a lot of tension in them, and then when you first trim them, they'll move. Now maybe not right away, sometimes they will right away, but what I'd like to do was, if I was going to complete 20 or 25 inlaid bowls in a week, I would trim them all and then put them up on the shelf that you see in my videos to the right, to my left, and let the tension come out of them. And what I've done with this is I put this actually in my clean room where there's heat, and you can see that there's quite a bit of movement in it. So I thought that I would point that out. I know that sometimes it's not really the case where you're going to have that opportunity to do that like that, but I prefer to do it that way, and I found that the finished product always really seemed to run really true afterwards. And one of the main reasons why I would trim the bowls is because I would work on large areas like this, and it was like a production thing where, okay, I'd fill in all of the major voids and pull the next one down and do the same thing, and that way, you know, it's concurrent activity where you're waiting for. At that time I was using a lot of CA glue to hold the inlays in, but you know, you're waiting for that to cure up. So it would go back up on the shelf, I'd bring another one down, and it would, the cycle would just keep going and going. Now, what I want to do with this piece is you can see how that natural void is just really gnarly. And I really like the look of that when you combine resin or natural materials or whatever with it. Now, on the ends, traditionally, like this is a big split here, there's two of them, and I really hate the look of this too. So what I want to do is try and replicate this, but on the ends where I'm going to cut this out, I want to try and do the same thing so that it looks similar, but it's probably not, but it's going to look fairly decent. At least I hope it's going to look decent. Same thing on the end, and I know that this may not bother a lot of people, but there's a crack right there. So I'll cut this whole area out of here, make this all jagged looking, and hopefully in the end it's going to be a really cool looking piece. So, but I thought that I would show that as far as movement is concerned, because I know that a lot of times people may trim up the bowl and they're like, well, I thought this was dry and now it's moving, like what's going on here? And wood does move with the seasons, so make sure you put that in the back of your mind as well. But you know, this thing's probably sitting at 5% moisture. It's, you know, it's wintertime here in Canada, it's quite dry. So what you're seeing here is just the wood relaxing, and sometimes you got to trim again. So this time around, we're able to bring the speed up to 750, so that's a bonus. I did notice that on the very foot that I didn't cut away enough material there, because that void goes into the foot area, so I thought I would clean that up a little better as well. But anyway, we're just going to take a little bit of trimming here, and then now we'll do some drawing and try and figure out exactly how to make this look as natural as possible. It's going to be very interesting to see your thoughts on this. I'm reasonably pleased with it, but by all means, I'm very curious to see what your thoughts are going to be on this inlay area that these two inlay areas that I've created. There, I don't know how well you're going to pick that up, but something like that. I don't know. It's I need to make this jagged edge a little more up here maybe. We'll just cut it out and we'll go from there. And there's that other spot right here, that big crack, and there's more on the front top of this, so it's got to go too. There, all the squiggly area is going to get cut out. That's probably not going to be much fun. Let's see how we make out with that. So that is a coping saw, and they work great for working on areas like this. Now this is, like I said earlier, about 3/4 of an inch thick, I would say, somewhere around there, maybe even further, maybe more than that. And it's hard maple, so it's not an easy thing to cut by hand. Anyway. I don't know if I got any more of them blades. And we don't have to worry about doing that anymore because I didn't have any more blades. So we're on to the jigsaw here. I absolutely hate this jigsaw. I will be replacing it. It was something that we bought years ago, and I do not like the way that it works. So that will be an update on the other end at the new shop. And talking about the new workshop, there's really nothing new to report on that. For those of you who are not aware of it, We are selling our house here in Eastern Ontario, and we plan on moving to the east coast of Canada, New Brunswick, to be exact. That's where my wife and I are both from originally. So we're going to be moving home and building a new workshop, much larger than the one I've got, and of course a new house on family land. And we're just waiting for things for the market to pick up here so that we can make that happen. Well, I don't know if it's any better or not. I guess we'll find out. Anyway, I got a little bit more cleaning up to do on this. That's what's called a typhoon bit. I get this one from Lee Valley here in Canada, and it does a really good job kind of scoring up the surface and, you know, taking away a lot of the roughness, but it will give the epoxy a good tooth to bond to in regards to the wood. And along with that, you know, like these voids, I thought that it would look more natural if they ended in kind of a point instead of having a rounded over piece at the end of that crack. All right, so what I want to do now is actually use the torch, and I'm going to burn all down in here as much as I can. I'm also going to burn this big void so that it all kind of matches. This dark ring, of course, isn't going to be here, so I'm hoping that by burning all of them, it'll kind of all blend in together and look normal-ish. Anyway, we're gonna have to go outside to do that, so let's do that. So I think using this method will do two things. Well, I know it does do two things because I did it. But by burning it and let it actually burn, it will take away a lot of the rough, straight edges, if you will. And along with that, it's going to give you that dark ring that's around the inlay, which I think is very beneficial as well. It just adds another depth to it. There, that's probably enough damage. I don't want to use any water on this, but geez, I may have to. Yeah, the wood was so dry that I actually had a really hard time getting this put out. I just kept scraping away and taking all the embers off until eventually it stopped burning. But that shows you how dry it is. Anyway, I'll get this out eventually and we'll see you in the shop. Well, ain't she purty? All burned up the way she is. All right, let's fix her. I could have skipped this method, but I think that it's important to include all of this stuff to show you how I do these inlay areas and it doesn't run everywhere, the epoxy. So, you know, I try to do it as close as I can to where the area ends on the inside, but, you know, you got to stay far enough back that you actually don't push glue into the inlay area, which is definitely something you don't want to do. And then what I like to do is just trim it up and then run another bead of glue around it so it's double glued, and hopefully that will keep things from leaking. If you do get an epoxy leak, they are very, very hard to stop. And a lot of times you're going to end up losing all of the epoxy that you put into a void. So, you know, it's really important to take some time and to do it properly. Set yourself up for success, and if you take any shortcuts on it, you'll pay the price for it. Trust me, I've been there. A few times, I might add. I didn't like how this one area was kind of pushed in. It still ends up being an issue, but it's not something that we can't correct. I think maybe I should have just laid the plastic material in there a little tighter, and then we probably would have avoided all of that. But I was trying to make the inlay area as small as I can so that I'm not using a ton of epoxy to do the inlay. All right, I'm going to need to put one over top of this too, but first I got to get our inlay material in, and And here it is. Aluminum shavings. These come from Nathan. Thanks again for that. So yeah, we got to fill this in first because we won't be able to do it afterwards. Now my hands are pretty tough, but I probably should have been wearing, say, maybe a rubber glove or something. That way the aluminum, because it is quite sharp, it'd stick into the glove and not your skin. I'm not going to use these little squiggly ones. I should also mention that, you know, if you do pick up these shavings from a manufacturer that's running a CNC machine or whatever, they will be covered in a coolant of some sort. So you got to make sure you clean that off before you do any inlay with them. I don't know how that would react with the epoxy, and I don't know if it would even be an issue, but I always like to clean any of that kind of stuff up before I use it, just to eliminate any potential issues. So I was knocking on the side of the bowl, and then what ended up happening was the aluminum shavings ended up going deeper down inside of that inlay there. So it's a bit of an issue here in the future, and I'll show you what I should have done, or tell you what I should have done. But anyway, I cut it open and just sealed it up, and I thought I was going to be good to go from there. This week we're going to be using an art cast from Designer Epoxy. Great thing about this is we'll be able to work on this tomorrow. So you can pour this up to 1 inch thick. Some of the areas here might be a little thicker than that, but it was perfectly fine. The other thing is, make sure you mix your epoxy thoroughly so that you don't have any curing issues down the road. Now I want to lightly tint this with turquoise. So that's what I'm doing here. You don't really even notice it all that much in the finished piece, but I thought it was important to give it some sort of a tint. All right, I'm going to use a little syringe to do this area. I don't know, I might use it to do them all. And you can see in the syringe that it's quite light. Yeah, that's going to take a long time to wick down into there. That seems to be the most effective method, is to put it down as far as you can and then inject it. Definitely going to have to put some more shavings in here though. It's slowly working there, but it is taking some time to get there. See if we can encourage it this way. There, I think the two on the sides here are good. It's just this one here. What would work good here is if you had a tube that you could put on the end of the syringe and then put it all the way down into the bottom of that inlay, and then inject the epoxy as you're extracting the little hose. That would have worked great, I think. So far I don't see any leaks, so that's a positive thing. I knew this was going to be a problem, and sure enough, it is. I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to. Hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me here. Well, it looks like we've got certainly the majority of the air out now anyway. There, I don't know if that's going to work or not, but that's all we got. She's a 50-50 chance, I think, if it's going to work or not. Okay, that's it. I'm just going to put this in the pressure pot. I'm going to do my best to level it, and we'll see you tomorrow. So it is the next day. I just took this out of the pressure pot and I was carrying it with one hand. I'm like, man, this thing feels pretty heavy. And it was 6.2 pounds, and that is 2.8 kilograms. So that's pretty heavy. No leaks. So happy days for that. Let's get this on the lathe and see what we're dealing with. So I prefer to get this material off. If you don't, what can happen is it can break free and then it starts slapping your hands. So that's why I like to remove it if I can. Some people will question, well, why didn't I pour some epoxy in and then put some of the aluminum shavings in and then just keep doing that? And I think all that would happen is the aluminum would end up sticking to everything and it wouldn't go down into the inlay. Well, it would eventually, but you know, I just thought I seen that as a bigger fight than what I was going to do if I poked a hole in it and did it that way. So I'll be honest with you, I thought that this was going to be a really tough fight with this stuff, and I think once we get deeper into it, I mean, I'm basically just stripping off the stuff that we glued on there and maybe a little bit into the inlay, but I'm surprised it's cutting as well as it is. I thought it was going to put up a bigger fight than that. Interesting. So in these cases, I usually just like to use the gouge to strip off all that hot melt glue and the plastic that's left behind in these inlays, and then switch to the Hercules. But you know, the bowl gouge was actually cutting it fairly clean, so I kept with it until it got down near the base here, and then I could feel the edge going off of it. So that's when I ended up switching out to the number 3 Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems. And here it is right there. And again, you know, this ate that stuff up like it was nothing. It was a little bit harder combined with the resin than the wood is. And we'll talk about this a little further on. But I was really quite surprised at how well the gouge was cutting this. But of course the Hercules, well, you can't put carbide up against high-speed steel. You can't. And that's the benefit of having the Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems. Link in the description. So if you remember, I was fighting with one spot up near the rim where that plastic was encroaching into the inlay area. And so what I'm doing here is having a look at it, and sure enough, so when I put it in the pressure pot, it was the other way, and then when the pressure went in, it changed and it kind of collapsed on itself into the inlay area. So now, you know, we've got to go a little thinner than I typically like to go on stuff like this. This is perfectly fine. The inlay is not going anywhere. But, you know, like I said earlier, I typically like to be, you know, 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch diameter when I'm dealing with inlays like this, just to make sure there's not going to be any issues in the future. Lots of people asking about the respirator that I'm using, and it's the Power Cap from JSP. Now, when I first initially bought this, I put it on my head, and as you can see, I wear glasses when I'm turning or close-up work, and it felt like my glasses were hitting on the shield, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. But I don't have a very large head, and there's not really any padding inside the helmet. Well, there is, but it's, you know, there's no room for adjustment. There is an adjustment strap at the back, but what was happening was it was sitting right down on top of my head, and it was pushing down on my glass arms, and it was really kind of irritating. So what I did was I contacted Peak Safety. They're like, I don't know, buy some bicycle helmet liner material off of Amazon, throw that in the helmet, and you won't have any issues. And sure enough, I did that, and it works absolutely fantastic now. Well, all right. I'm really surprised at how easy that was to turn. I thought it was going to put up a much bigger fight than it did. There is one spot here, wormholes, bug holes or something. So what I'm going to use for that is the black medium from Starbond. There, that's got some pretty deep passageways. I'll probably have to do that again. But anyway, that will allow you to move on fairly quickly. Of course, they have brown and black. That's really it. Everywhere else is actually pretty decent looking. I definitely need to cut this back a little further. It's still got the ridges in it from the stuff that we glued on there. This here, I'm happy with the way that it looks. Yeah, this one too. It's funny, it almost looks like there's, it's like air bubbles, but it isn't. It's actually shavings that are bent over. Anyway, I'll let that cure up for about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll trim it up. So as you watch me trim this up again, I'll just briefly talk about last week's project, the titanium sky. Very well received. Thank you all that watched that video. It's funny because there was a number of comments where it looked like it was bluish in one part of the inlay, or the resin that was there. And that's simply just because there's kind of black walnut ghosting it below it. And that's why it kind of looked bluish with the hyper shift in there. So, but yeah, it was really surprising to see that many comments. I didn't really notice it all that much, to be honest with you, but in the thumbnail it certainly showed up. It was quite evident that it was there. But that's what that was. Anyway, that was an awesome video, and I will link that at the end of this one if you missed it last week, so you can check it out. So you may have noticed that I did have to hit that with the accelerator again. The problem with a lot of these little worm passages, when you stick the CA glue in there, it could go on for quite some time. So you keep filling and filling and filling, and then of course it takes longer for that CA to set before you can move forward with it. Still got a little bit of, I should mention that the plastic material that you seen me glue on there, I got that from Costco, and it's essentially shelf liners is what it is. And I really like using it because you can actually, it's flexible, so you can pull it and manipulate it to where you want it. Just don't make it so tight that you have a hard time injecting your epoxy in certain areas. You know, one of the things that I struggle with is actually making things random. I don't know if that's the norm, but my brain doesn't want me to do random things. So cutting out areas like that, you wouldn't think that it would be difficult to do, but for some reason, trying to make things random, I find very hard to do. and I don't know if that's normal or not, but this isn't the first time that I've kind of struggled with that, where I think, you know, some people just come in here and they'd whip that out and go, oh yeah, that looks pretty normal. But my brain just doesn't seem to work that way. Anyways, regardless, it's going to be really interesting to see what you guys think about it. So leave me a comment down below. So I don't know how well the camera is going to pick that up or not, but you can see some tool marks in here. And you know, I don't stress about tool marks at all. What I stress about is end grain that's torn. There's a little bit there, but that'll sand out nice and easily. You should be more concerned about end grain tear out than you should be about tool marks that you see here. And you know, you see this around these hard inlays where the tool basically is digging in and it hits the inlay and it kind of bounces over it because the inlay is usually harder than the wood is, and then it actually digs in on the other side. So you see that a fair bit. But you know, overall, I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. And anyway, I'll sand this in real time with 60 grit, a pass or two, and literally within seconds, all of these tool marks will be gone. So these are the 3.5-inch nipple discs from sandpaper.ca, and again, there is a link in the description below to get 10% off your next order. I think another thing that really surprises people is how slow I go when I initially start sanding. Very little movement, and I'm just ever so gradually working my way down into the center of the bowl. I typically come out of the bowl a little faster than when I go down into it. I don't know, that's just the way that I've always sanded, and I've watched a few videos in the past where that's how they approach sanding. Usually 3 passes will typically do it. You usually don't have to go any higher than that, but you know, number of passes I should say. One little area down here in the center was a bit of an issue that I didn't, that's one area where I should have maybe cut it a little better than I did. But you know, I don't, like I said, I don't stress about tool marks. Tool marks will sand away very easily, but that torn end grain is always an issue. So if you've got torn end grain, keep working on it until you clean it up, or else you're just going to do a lot of sanding, that's for sure. But as I progress through the grits, I will get faster and faster moving in and out of the bowl. And the reason for that is because the higher grits will create heat, and that heat can then heat check your bowl. So that's why I typically pick up the pace a little bit at higher grits. So we've got some voids in this, so we're going to have to fill these up before we do any more sanding. All right, so I just did another filling of black CA. Came through on the other side too. But there's lots of little empty voids in our inlay areas here. So to fix that, we're going to use the UV resin from Designer Epoxy. Some of these inlays don't need this, but it's very hard to see. So I'm just going to do all of them, and then that way hopefully we get them all. We'll be able to give this and carry on with sanding here and get our first coat finish on. If you haven't seen this before, it's cured with a UV light. You can get this from Designer Epoxy as well. And what I'll do is I'll leave this on here for 2 minutes, and I'll work my way all around the bowl till I get all of these inlay areas filled in, and then I'll carry on sanding, and we'll see you when we put the first coat finish on. Well, alright, this is the first coat of Waterlux gloss. No buffing on this piece. I don't see the need for it. I only sand it to 500 as well, and the reason for that is because these areas are so busy, you're not even going to be able to see any little tiny little scratches. So when it comes to buffing, I just don't see the benefit of it in a piece like this. But anyway, this is Waterlux gloss. Now I did buy some water-based Waterlux. What's it called? H2O Lux. I didn't want to use it on this piece because I don't know how it's going to react to it. So we'll probably see that next week. Well, there you go. Lots of character in this bowl. Just light here. What do you think of our repairs? Does it look natural? See this side. Of course, the bottom. I like it. I like it a lot, actually. And here's where all your bird's eyes are, right here. Of course, there's streaks because they're elongated, because it's on a curved surface. If I can get that to show up correctly. I don't know. And there they are on the outside. There, you might be able to see them in that direction there. That's a little hard to pick up. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. I think that this is a beautiful bowl, and hopefully the new owner likes it too. And our aluminum shavings, what do you think of that? Very cool. Right, see you tomorrow for the second coat. Now this is a pet peeve that I have with the mounting of the filters on the power cap. I really do wish that those were at the back. They do clog up quite quickly. That is the Triple E buffing compound, and of course now that I've got my coat of finish on there, I prefer to buff the Waterlux with the buffing compound, so that's why we're going to do it on, before we put the second coat on. But I really love this power cap. I'm happy with it. It was a little on the pricey side, but I get it. You've only got a set of lungs, so you need to protect them. And of course, we're going to use some denatured alcohol to clean the surface prior to the next coat going on. But I wish the filters were in a different spot. Good morning. This is the second coat of Waterlux Gloss. Well, there you have it. The grain in around where that knot was is just crazy. Lighting's not good though. Wild grain, burly grain. There's all that bird's eye area up in here. And the other side, really digging these aluminum shavings. So this will definitely need another coat. Sometimes you can get away with 2 coats with hard maple, but we're not going to be able to do that in this case. In this case, I should say. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. See you when we're doing the foot. So, all right, finally on to finishing the bottom here. I'm going to part this from the lathe, or part it from the waste block, I should say. And then, of course, we're going to use the vacuum chuck to finish the bottom on this. So I need to do this each and every giveaway because the scammers, a lot of times what they will do is they will reply to your comment that you make and say, congratulations, you won. Here, and they'll give you a phone number to call, and they'll want you to cover shipping or whatever. That is 100% fraudulent. So if somebody replies to your comment, there are 3 dots to the right of that comment. Click on it and report it as spam. YouTube will take it down. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. And let's draw a couple of names for the epoxy and for this beautiful bowl. Since the last giveaway, there have been 5 videos, including the giveaway video at 115,000. These are for the bowl. These are the names that the YouTube random comment picker has selected for the bowl. And on this side, these are the names that it's selected for the epoxy draw. Yeah. Good luck, everyone. Let's start picking some names. All right, so these are the 5 names for the bowl. I've just kind of folded them over. So in they go. Get my lid. And the winner of the bowl is right here. Michael Rainey, you are the winner of the bowl. Please send your name or send your details to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, your mailing address, and we'll also need a phone number and of course your email for that. So congratulations. Let's do the epoxy. Okay, so here are the 5 names for the 3-gallon kit from Designer Epoxy. And the winner of the 3-gallon kit of Designer Epoxy goes to this person. Congratulations, Jason English. You are the winner of the 3-gallon kit from Designer Epoxy. Same thing for you. Please send me your details to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and Designer Epoxy will get your kit mailed out to you. Congratulations. Let's talk about this week's project, actually. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what you guys think about these man-made natural inlay areas. This is an absolutely beautiful bowl. There's the other one. I've got a little bit of work to do on it, but you know, overall I'm pretty happy with it. Where's your bird's eye maple area? This is your area where all the bird's eye are. Yeah, I know it's super shiny. I did notice that there was a little bit of a sag in there, so I'm gonna have to do that again. I know that there's been some people saying that they're not getting the same results that I'm getting with Waterlux, and I can't help but think that it's one of two things. Either the finish is getting too thick on them, or they're not applying enough product. And you want it wet enough that it's not going to sag, but it's right there. So I know that a lot of times on my third coat especially, I'll be put on a little bit too much material, and then you'll just see a tiny little sag in there, so then you'll have to sort that out. But you got to put on the right amount in order to get the same kind of finish that you see with this. The size on this, it is, I got this written down here. This is 12.5 inches across, 5 inches tall, and it's about 3/8 of an inch in thickness. It now weighs 3.1 pounds, and that is 1.4 kilograms. Here's the look at the center. There's so much burly grain, chatoyance, bird's eyes. I mean, this is a very, very nice ball. There is the very bottom, and as per normal, there's no finish because it's Thursday and I'm out of time. Beautiful bowl. Absolutely love this. There's just so much going on in this visually. You could stare at it forever and still see new things. I really like the inlay down in here, and the one thing that I really like about the aluminum shavings is that they're cupped. So it's like it's another dimension with the epoxy sitting on front of them, and a lot of them are like this on the side. So it's really neat. We will definitely be seeing a lot more of this stuff in the future. Speaking of draws, don't forget to put Designer Epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the next draw. And we are going to move that to 130,000. So every 10,000 subscribers from here forward, we may change that up in the future. That's what it's going to be. I don't want to abuse Designer Epoxy. They were so gracious to step in here and say, yeah, we'll help you with your giveaways. So thank you so much again to Designer Epoxy for that. But when I first kind of talked to Gabriel about it, it was every 10,000, and then things were kind of moving slowly, and then we switched to every 5,000. But now, of course, it's faster and quicker, and I just don't want to abuse them. So hopefully everybody can appreciate that. They've been a great sponsor, and I definitely don't want to lose them. So along with that, of course, I don't mind giving stuff away, but I can't do it every month. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel and supporting me here. But we're gonna have to move this to every 10,000. If it slows down again, then we'll go back to every 5,000. But as it stands right now, we're gonna do every 10,000. So the next giveaway is at 130,000. What else? Yeah, by commenting down below, you'll be entered into the draw automatically. And I do ship worldwide, but of course with Designer Epoxy, it's only for continental USA and Canada. And of course, when you use code INLAYGYM at checkout, you get 10% off your order, 10 free color bags, free shipping within continental USA and Canada. Fantastic deal. All right, that's it. Next week we are going to be doing another bowl, but it's kind of with some more dinosaur material, you know, dragon material. So anyway, that's next week. So take care, stay safe, don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends. That is the largest way for me to build my presence here on YouTube. I would really appreciate it. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care.